So, everybody, welcome back to Injury Time. Once again, we have Pradhyum Reddy with us to, sort of do a proper nosedive into what happened this season. Brad, how are you? Thank you so much for coming on the show just after getting out of the bubble. I really, really appreciate it.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. I think it's almost like this has become tradition now for the season. Start the season with a show on Injury Time and finish the season. So it's a perfect way to sort of bookend the season with an Injury Time episode.
So before we start, I have to say this, and I was looking at, during the show and stuff, your hair has grown back so fast. It's amazing. I mean, you made the bet, you lived up to the stipulation, and it's come up so fast. Like, I was really, really impressed with the speed.
Yeah, I did. I should sort of I should get in sponsored by some hair grow products then, I think, next season.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the funny thing is, I made the bet saying Kerala Blasters won't play any nil-nils this season. The next game they played out a 0-0, and that was the only one out of the 23 games that they played.
Yeah,
that was 0-0. So I think they did it on purpose.
So speaking of Kerala Blasters, ISL fans finally here in the final, full stadium. I felt emotional watching it, on TV. What was it for you to be in the stadium after 2 years, of nobody around?
It was like actually driving up to the stadium. We just as a car pulled up just outside Fatora, you could see the fans lining up, and for me, it actually just you get obviously the cliche things, the goosebumps, the chill. It actually felt like being at a football game because that's what I remember Indian football as. My first experience in Shillong as a fan before I even joined Shillong Lajong was seeing this where fans were there a couple of hours before kickoff. And then you get into the stadium and it's, 28,000 people in Nehru Stadium in Shillong. I've gone to, obviously you remember from the early days of Bengaluru FC, the first season where, fans were there before kickoff. You could see outside and near Garuda Mall and, outside the stadium at the bars. And obviously I've been to Kochi, experienced it there, experienced it in Kolkata, even if it's local league in Kolkata, you could see people lining up on that in the street towards, from Eden Gardens all the way down to sort of the Maidan. So that's what Indian football is about. And it's good to see, the fans returning in the numbers and, credit to even Hyderabad FC. They had a fair few fans there for the finals, and looking at their celebrations, there should be that many people hopefully next season when they play their home games there. So I think that's a great sign to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we're just going to deconstruct the teams and the season they had, like you always do. So we'll start with Hyderabad because that's the last match that happened. For me, I felt like they were the best team in the league. And league table don't lie and all that kind of stuff, but at least I thought they were the best team, slightly shortchanged with what happened with COVID and things like that. What did you make of their season? It's been fantastic to see how Manola's managed to get them to the level, right? Like they came up last year, pushed it further this year, hopefully another step next year.
Yeah, no. I mean, I've had this discussion with some of the analysts and stuff, guys that we know quite well and respect. When the old cliche, the league table doesn't lie. Well, it does. In a 20-game season, it does lie because it's only 20 games. But I think if you cumulatively look at 20 games of last season plus the 23 that Hyderabad played this year, over 43 games, I think no one would have any doubts and say they'd been the best team over 40 games. And I think all credit to Manolo, all credit to Varun and people behind the scenes as well who've got them there. And they were terrific. It's a shame because of the whole outbreak of cases with the teams that they didn't get to play against Jamshedpur with a full strength team. They had Juan Victor, Bart, Katimani, everyone available at full strength for that game. That could have been the real title decider for the league. And then, see whether they were better than Jamshedpur on that night, as opposed to, that 3-0 was Jamshedpur versus Hyderabad B almost, not Hyderabad A team. So that's the only disappointment in a way. But that's why I kept saying it's like, in a way, there's justice in football sometimes. The team that were everyone neutral's favourites were unlucky not to get the first spot. you could say, and then deservedly got the trophy at the end of it. But for me, that's why it would be nice if it was just a straightforward league. Team that finishes first gets first, and team that finishes second gets the reward for being consistent over the course of the season. And in a way, that's what happened. So I think it's a nice sort of end to the season that way.
So do you look at that team? When it was the start of the season, we were talking, and I was asking you, like, is it really Bart Ogbeche? Is he the guy? And then you said he's the one who takes teams to titles, and he took the team to titles. And he came back from so far behind in the top scorer run also, and just motored through and all-time top scorer in the league.
Yeah, I remember we did a game where I think they didn't win. It was a draw or something, and he missed a couple of chances which he'd normally put away, and there was one of them was a header, and I think I'd said on comms that with Bart you expect better. And then we post-match when we spoke to him, and I said, I said something, and he goes, you're absolutely right. I'll need to go back and work on my finishing, work on this, on my heading, etc. And testament to the guy. Guess what he does in the next game? He pops up with a hat trick, left foot, right foot header. So it's like he's obviously gone back and worked not just on the heading but on everything. And I think when you've got people like that who introspect and realize that, listen, I need to do more. And he said it. He said we as foreigners need to do more. And I think Manolo said that as well. There's not many coaches who come out and I wouldn't say throw their players under the bus, but make them accountable. And I think Manolo did that. He said the foreign players need to do more. The players need to do more. And you could see that got a reaction out of them, because when he felt he hadn't done enough last season, he said, if I was the management, I'd sack me after one of the games when they'd done badly. So he's willing to point the finger at himself, and he points the finger at the right people at the right time. And I think that's what got them where they are. And look, if you've got a Bart Ogbeche in your team, you've got a Juanan in your team, you've got a João Victor in your team, that's a spine that has the hallmarks of everything. You've got experience, you've got quality, and you've just got personalities as well that you need in a dressing room and on the field that'll win you titles. So I don't think anyone of us was surprised that they made the top four.
Absolutely not. And credit to them. I think Juanan also was a very shrewd signing. The two wing backs, probably the best in the league, the two of them. And the youngsters also going forward. I don't know. I have spoken to Manolo. He seems like a very fatherly, nice guy, but he's got a steel in him. And oftentimes you see that also.
Yeah, so what I love about Manolo, we obviously saw him last season, thought, this is the right kind of guy for Indian football. And then this year we had a AFF coaches workshop, which was a refresher course. And they invited two of the Indian Super League coaches. And guess who were the two candidates? Owen Coyle and Manolo Marquez. And, go on, obviously both of them are the ones who picked up the silverware at the end of the season. But when Manolo gave us that talk presentation, he was one of the last ones on the course. And for somebody where English isn't his first language, it put together a very good presentation, went through it. He said, listen, there's about 12 points I want to touch upon. Halfway through, I'll stop. You got any questions, please? And he went through his coaching journey, how he started with youth, coaching kids. He had pictures of it from the younger years, coaching youth teams in Spain and on these, simple pitches. They weren't anything fancy, all the way through to working with La Liga teams with some big names of Spanish football who we would have all heard of, worked with a women's team along the way. And, his journey to Asia, and I didn't enjoy it, obviously very short spell in Thailand and then left because things weren't right, came to India. And he's one of those who wants to understand about India, not just about, the league. And even though he said, well, I've been in a bio bubble, he understands where, a Neem Dorji's from which part of the region, from the northeast, how difficult it was for them in lockdown in those parts of the country to train in the off season. And you get coaches like that who understand India and Indian football. And in the end of it, he mentioned something that the only thing next for him was he wanted to coach a national team. That's the only thing he hadn't done in his CV. And if you look at it, it's almost like it would be the perfect candidate, I think, for that, because I look at his team from the start of the season. You're looking, it's got Hitesh, he's got Yasir, and he had Rohit Danu playing. And then as the season moved towards the end, you've got Shovik starting, who wasn't, Aniket starting, who wasn't. And the core, the principles of the team were there, but it didn't matter whether Neem Dorji was stepping in for Ashish Rai or whether Aniket was stepping in for Adanu. Everyone did their role. So he kept not just the first 11 happy, he kept the whole squad happy and hungry as well. And I think that's absolute credit to him as well. And the same with the foreign players. I think he knew when to use a Severio, when to use a Edu Garcia, when to use Chianese. And I think, again, the signing of Hasa Kamara in the January window was super smart as well. I think you can't fault them with anything this season.
Absolutely. And I remember him telling me also after the podcast about the different languages that even within the Northeast, all of them speak different languages. And he's like talking about how he was listening and trying to figure out, oh, is this the same and stuff. So like you said, very much interested in understanding how the culture of football works for different people. So good for him.
And no surprise he got success, because you look at the coaches who failed, not just this year, over the course of Indian football over the last whatever many years, the ones who fail are the ones who fail to understand that if you don't understand India and then secondary Indian football, you're not going to succeed. It doesn't matter what you've done in the past or where you've coached. Those are the basics of being able to work over here. So.
Absolutely. So congratulations to Hyderabad. Let's go with that. And another team, Kerala Blasters, I can't but not congratulate that team because nobody expected much out of them. I think Ivan has been absolutely brilliant, a very affable guy as well. So what do you make of the transformation that happened, including people like Kabra and all being such a key factor? Like you've known Kabra for a long time. You've been a big supporter and advocate of Kabra as a human being and as a leader. And he's got that environment, I guess. And suddenly he's the standout player.
Yeah, I think I'll go answer your question backwards. I think starting with Cabra, I think at the start of the season, there was a pre-season where he gave some speech to all the players, and it was on their social media, which I thought their social media, by the way, was brilliant this season as well. They captured the essence of the team very well, and rather than how it was before. And I think I posted something saying, this is one of the reasons this team will go far, is having somebody like Cabra. And then Cabra replied, we had a couple of offline chats. And the last, obviously after the final, he came over and spoke to Eric and myself. And he said, thank you very much for both of you, to Eric and me, for encouragement and the support. And we said, listen, mate, you earned it. But I think having him was possibly the best signing they made, because amongst all your foreign players are all new to India, except Sipovic and Chencho to an extent. But the main foreign players were new to Indian football. They're four main ones. And you need somebody who can connect between India and new foreign players coming in, so you don't have that divide in teams. And somebody who can bridge that gap. And they have a lot of impressionable, talented youngsters in that team over the last couple of years. And you needed somebody who's been there, done it, won trophies at East Bengal, won it at Chennai, won it at Bengaluru, won it everywhere. And everyone immediately are going to respect in the dressing room, both foreign players as well as Indian players. And I think he was a sort of hidden glue in a way that kept everything together for them. And, he's a much more mature Cabra. We've obviously seen him from the tough tackling days of East Bengal. And, you're like, all right, Cabra, yellow card almost. And now it wasn't. It was a different player. And again, we mentioned Juan An, now we're mentioning Cabra as like two key BFC players that you let go, and you see what they added to their new team and what they missed, or the old team has missed from them. And I think that way Ivan benefited greatly from having him, and sometimes a little bit of luck. And not to take anything away, but when you start analyzing a team, you look at their first game of the season. He started with it was a 4-4-2 of sorts. They struggled, obviously, lost 4-2 against ATK Mohun Bagan, but towards the end, when he put Adrian Luna close to Diaz and they combined and scored that goal, you think, okay, if these guys can play together, they'll get something. The next game, it was a different partnership up front. I think it was Diaz and Vasquez, possibly, I think. And then 4-4-2, they drew, that was the game they drew 0-0, obviously after my bet. And then the next game was against BFC, was a different front two, and they drew 1-1. But in both those games, he had to play foreign centre-backs together, Sipovic and Leskovic. And that was because obviously they'd conceded 4 in the first game. The next 2 games, they went 0-0, 1-1. But you could see that to get the right balance, he had to drop something. And I think the injury at the back, injuries to Jessel, injury to Albino, all those things actually helped create the team. You can say you can wonder about it because in the market, Prabhsukh and Gill was on the market. Teams were being offered Prabhsukh and Gill to take them off of Kerala Blasters' books because at that time they felt Albino's number 1. Why do we need an expensive number 2? So imagine if teams had come in and taken Prabhsukh and Gill at that point off of them. Imagine if teams had taken Nishu off of them, who was also another expensive player that was down the pecking order in terms of Jessel, the captain, was starting there. So it's all ifs and buts, but that's football. I think so. Once they fell upon that, it works with Sahal, Luna, Vasquez, and you can play all 4 of them, and you can still be defensively solid. Where I think you got to give credit to Reva Harmipam slotting in there next to Leskovic, and Leskovic developing him, because you need a good senior partner next to you to help. And it's easier, I should say, for Harmipam when you look to your right, you've got Cabra, you look to your left, you've got Leskovic. It makes your job a lot easier playing in that. And in front of you, you've got Jeeks and Puite are doing tremendous amount of work. And when one's not available, Ayush coming in and, the energy levels that he provides. So I think that central sort of, you could say the base in front of the goalkeeper was very, very solid. So it became difficult to beat them. And when you got a Vasquez and Pereira Diaz, if you're tough, and Luna and Sahal, if you're tough to beat, goals are going to come. So yeah. I think that's, so credit to everything just fit.
Do you think what he did with Sahal, especially when you're looking at it, he is not doing his fancy runnings anymore. He's more arriving at the right time to finish up the chances. He had a very productive season. Is this the Sahal that we've always wanted to see? I'm sure he can go further, but is this the Sahal starting of what we want to see?
Yeah, I remember about 3 or 4 years ago, before I even got into the thing with the ISL, where I think I'd done something on Superpower Football where I spoke about how good a player Sahal had potential to become, because everyone you spoke to, because he's got the ability on the ball, he's got that. He's not come from an academy, so he's not been coached to play a certain way. He's got that certain sense of street footballer about him, where he plays by instinct, and he's got that. And a lot of, I think over the years, coaches have tried to pigeonhole him into, if you're going to play, where do you play him? You can't play him as a 10 because he doesn't do certain things in the spine of the team, you lose. You play him out wide, he didn't do maybe the defensive work. And you've got to find how you use him in a system. It's just like how in the past coaches managed to get the best out of Brandon, where supremely talented, but how do you play them, fit them into the system? And I think that's what Ivan did tremendously well. He just figured out, don't curb the creativity, but recognize where you can do stuff with the ball, where you can do it without the ball. Sometimes you can arrive late and the ball's there, and then all you have to do is your little magic in the box, as opposed to trying and doing it in areas where if it doesn't come off, your team then gets hurt on the counterattack. So you didn't see too often where he was losing the ball and his team was struggling. And again, credit to the kid, to Sahal as well, where you could see a much better defensive work rate. I mean, there was the fact that he was getting subbed off in most of the games in the 60th, 70th minute. It was because he was putting a shift, covering back and helping. And again, maybe credit to Cabra as well. If you're playing with somebody like Cabra behind you, you're constantly getting that instructions in your ears about get back, drop back, do the, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's another one. You certainly don't want to be not tracking back when Cabra's telling you to. So I'm sure you'll be on the receiving end at some point. So I think, so all those factors I think really helped him. And it's good to see that he got the rewards for it in terms of numbers. Best season ever for him in terms of things. But still, I mean, you compare numbers over the last couple of seasons with a Liston or with a Bipin or with others, there's still obviously scope for improvement. And I'm sure he'll be disappointed missing the semi-final and the final at the end. It was a chance. Maybe if he played, they could have gone a little bit further. So, but I think he's moving in the right direction. So that's good for him and for Indian football, especially for Kerala Blasters as well.
Yes. Now let's talk about Jamshedpur now. because
Yep.
I feel, and we put the tweet out as well, because they won the championship and they had their big hurrah moment, and then immediately it was gone. So, they won the league and they were the most consistent team. They had Greg Stewart and they played well and Hartley, and basically Owen Coyle did a fantastic job with the team, who not many people expected a lot out of, other than you, of course. In the preseason also you're talking about how good the team they are. So
Yep.
what do you make of the whole system that they had, and also the fact that sadly their happiness was rather curtailed quickly?
I think simplicity. I think that's the easiest way to describe it. It's we know over the years we've all debated is like there are certain players who've grown up in Indian football. Can they play a certain possession style? Can you sometimes modern day coaches sometimes can try and overcomplicate things? You get a lot of imitation coaches nowadays, especially I see it on coaching courses where they're like, oh, I want to play like Tuchel. I want to play like Guardiola. I'm going to invert my fullbacks. I'm going to do this. Like, okay, great. Those guys do it because they've got possibly the best players in the world. They're playing against the best players in the world. So they have to come up with systems that are going to break down opponents in certain situations. You don't necessarily have the time in Indian football. I mean, you're not training for as long as they are abroad. You've got players who are coming from 7 months of inactivity. You've got 1.5 months of preseason at best with limited friendly games because you're in a bubble. And then, games every 3 or 4 days where you don't have much time to tweak things. So I think credit to the coaches who were clever and found a system that's going to work, whether it's Manolo and whether it's Ivan, whether it's Owen Coyle, and they stuck with it. They didn't try and overcomplicate it. And Owen did a brilliant job. He was like, right, this is how we're going to play. We're going to set up with a back four. Our fullbacks aren't necessarily going to be bombing on too much and looking for creativity from them, which is why over the course of the season, if you look at it, Ricky played so many games, almost all of the 20 games. Dinliana played almost all of the 20 games. There's not many teams where you can say your fullbacks consistently play, and they don't get booked as well. It's not like they missed it. Normally you expect defenders will miss during suspension and injuries. These guys were fit. So credit to their strength and conditioning coach. By the way, Indian strength and conditioning coach, Adrian Diaz, kept them all physically in great shape. And they were available because they weren't getting into positions where, okay, I'm out of position, I've got a foul to get back. So simplicity at the back, solid goalkeeper, no changes, no tweaking, no asking him to try and play out from the back and complicate his game. He's a goalkeeper who can make saves. Rainesh, probably not. You don't want him dealing with too many passes at the back.
Yeah.
And then in front of them again, whether it's Pranay and Lima, whether it's Pranay and Jitendra or Mobashir at times, just simplicity. When the ball, find Greg Stewart almost. It was almost as simple as that, right? And I thought Greg Stewart was a revelation. You've got a guy like him. It's, those are the kind of numbers that win you stuff. When you can get double-digit assists and goals, you're halfway there to the title. And I think lastly, the most astute thing they did was get rid of Valskis in the January window.
Yeah.
Both from a team harmony point of view and even just simple goals output. Bringing in Chukwu, not only did they get the goals, they got a much more cohesive and happy unit. And you could see from then it was just.
He didn't mince any words, right? Owen Coyle, when he let go of Valskis, and there were all questions about, he's a former Golden Boot winner and blah, blah, blah. He didn't mince any words. He gave the numbers and he said, yeah, this is it. I need somebody else.
Yeah. And I think, look, he took Valskis with him from Chennai. And at that time, towards the end of last season, in the middle of last season, you could see there was obviously problems. It was either, I think whether it was the Monroy and David Grandes, the two Spaniards, there just seemed a lack of it was either the two Spaniards go or Valskis goes. It seemed like that. Somebody had to go. And at the end of the season, I opted to let the two Spaniards go, even though some would argue Monroy had decent numbers and etc. But that should have been the sign for Valskis to work harder and perform now, because the coach had given trust in him. And I think the same problems, from what I've heard, the same problems surfaced. And look, you can act like a prima donna if you're performing on the field. You can't act like a prima donna because you won a Golden Boot a few years ago. It has to be your last performance, not something you've done before. Otherwise, it's like the sort of Marcelino syndrome of this league. what you've done in the past is irrelevant. It's what you're doing in the here and now. And I think that's why, as a club, they were smart. Most people would have questioned that, thinking, are you seriously letting go of Valskis for Chima Chukwu? But I was confident enough. I took a bet with John Gregory on our little WhatsApp group, and I said, Chima Chukwu will score more than Valskis will. And obviously Valskis has gone to Chennai, and he said, no way, Prad. And I said, so we took I said, I'll shave my head again if you do. So that's why we'll say that. Put it down to that reason for John Gregory's odd haircut towards the end of the season.
So it's 1-1 for you. Win one, lose one in bets this year.
Oh no, 1-2. I think even Mace had to dye his hair blonde. So 2-1 to me.
Oh, so you're winning on the bets also. Perfect.
I'm winning on that, yeah.
Yeah. And can I just one thing on Greg Stewart, right? He's too overpowered for this league. To use the lingo, online gaming lingo, is too OP for this league. He seemed to be just walking. When the rest of the people are like running at him, he seems to be like jogging, walking slowly. It annoys me that he's that good for this league.
I had this debate with one of the colleagues, and one of the guys asked me. He asked me and Mace, and he said, which Indian player could, last 5 minutes in the Premier League? And both of us looked and said, none. And he's like, not even 5 minutes. I said, oh, the game's too fast.
Yeah.
And then we were watching the game, the three of us together, and we're commenting on how Greg Stewart can just dribble with the ball, and his eyes are up. He's looking for what options are around. He doesn't need to look at the ball. He doesn't look down. He's always scanning, looking up, and then finds the right pass at the right time. And when sometimes he'll see it and he goes, I'm not going to play that pass, because then he's almost like the chess move, 2 moves ahead, goes, that's not going to help the team. I'll just keep it and wait for something better to develop. And Greg Stewart, no disrespect to him, probably can't play in the Premier League. Obviously, he hasn't. And even in the Scottish Premier League, he wasn't like one of the key players in Rangers' title success. So that's the sort of, that's the level we're talking. Yeah. So that's the level we're talking about. So when you bring players from that level and they come here, the game is slow motion for them.
Yeah.
So it is, so I'm not surprised at all. And, and once they figure it out, you can see why, and it's times like we've seen it in the past with the guys like Hugo Bumus or Jahu as well, where, Jahu sometimes can look like he's just strolling through the game. Bumus can, people like Bumus can suddenly decide like, all right, I'm going to change the game now, and then flick a switch and then change it. Bright Anubakari did that last season. Yeah. So there is a stark contrast between players who played at the top European leagues, and then the ones and when they come over here, and all the more so this season because of one less foreigner.
Yeah, absolutely. So next team I want to talk about is ATK Mohun Bagan. Not the best of seasons. Everything would suggest they should win the league. The team, the money that they've spent, the coach that they poached, everything would suggest that they have to win the league. But didn't really work out for them.
It almost did. I'll have to give a little bit of credit to one, because you lost 2 games. You join a new club, and you only lose 2 games and you don't win anything. It's tough. But he lost the 2 most important games. He lost the first leg of the semi-final, and he lost effectively the Shield playoff with Jamshedpur. So he lost. If you're going to lose 2 games, don't lose the 2 most crucial games, right? But I think from the start of the season, you could see there were problems. I'm going even before the ISL started in AFC Cup. You look at that team and you look at the recruitment and you think, are these Habas signings or are these club signings? Like whether it's management or somebody from higher up.
For the names, no, in a lot of sense.
Yeah, like it was reactionary, almost like we lost the final because a goalkeeper made an error, or the goalkeeper got blamed for it. So let's get rid of the goalkeeper and bring the goalkeeper from the team that won the league. We lost the league. Maybe we don't have a match winner on as an individual. Let's go get Bumus, right? And once you sign that, you think, okay, now you've got possibly missing links, which you didn't have last season. But then you go and sign a Yoni Kauko. Great player. I thought he's one of the best players, again, in the league. Again, you could see somebody who's played at a much higher level, how easy it was for him once he acclimatized to the weather and the teammates and etc. But can you play? Is there space for a Bumus and a Yoni Kauko in the same team? Right? And then if you have to accommodate both of them, where's the space for tried and tested winners like Krishna and Williams, who play so well together and give you results when they play? And then if you try and accommodate all four, where's the balance? You certainly don't have it at the back without either McHugh or Thierry. You need a little bit of that balance. So I think that's where they got it wrong. And that's why if you don't have a coach or somebody with the footballing background making those recruitment decisions, you get your balance wrong. And I think, look, they've got two squads over there that can possibly finish top four.
Yeah.
Right. You can play with a Liston, Manvir. The other team can have a Kian Nasiri and a David Williams, or both teams are equally strong. One can start with Krishna up front. One, you have so many options over there. Even if you split those 6 foreigners and go 3-on-3 on each side, it's such a sort of strong squad. And similarly at the back, you've got guys like Ashutosh Mehta, who hardly played this season, Prabir Das, who hardly played this season, and they'd walk into most ISL teams.
Yeah.
So I think that's just where they got it wrong. It's sometimes almost like they had too many good players. So it becomes very difficult for a coach. Then you've got to manage the dressing room. You've got to manage the egos. You've got to keep everybody happy. And at the same time, win. And at the same time, improve the style of play. It almost reminds me of a few years ago when Chelsea were looking to replace Mourinho.
Yeah.
And they'd had so much success, but the diktat from the top was improve the style of play, but continue winning trophies. And you've got big names in the dressing room that you have to manage those egos as well. Like, how do you phase out a John Terry when he's coming to the end of his career, or Lampard due to move on, etc., Drogba's, etc. And I think that's, in a way, a lot of the challenges that Juan had. But at times I thought they played some really good football. And irrespective of where they finished, I think you'd still look at bright spots. You think how well Liston's progressed this year, how well Kian Nasiri's had a debut season. I thought Manvir and Liston showed at times that you can play without foreign strikers and still get success. Towards the end, Prabir still showed how good a player he is.
Yeah.
As did, I thought Pradhyum Kotal was pretty good at the back, that he can play right back and centre back. That's good for the national team. And so there's still a lot of positives from the Indian side of it. So not all doom and gloom.
Yeah, absolutely. They finished top 4 at the end of the day and lost in the semi-finals. But yeah, at least I would look at that team and maybe they learn from this, because you have Juan who has a certain aesthetics to his style and he's done it well in Goa. Hopefully they can figure it out and recruit better, or let some of them go. Yeah. Don't hoard players also.
Correct. Yeah. But see, top 4 honestly means nothing. I think this is it's a misnomer that has to go soon, because look, in the past when it was 8 teams, you finished top 4, you made the playoffs as they were called, and blah blah blah. People would tick a box saying, "Oh yeah, we had a good season. We made the playoffs." But since the change and since the Champions League spot has come in, you finish top, you get the Champions League. You finish second, you don't get anything. You finish third, you don't get anything. You finish fourth, you don't get anything. If you win the semi-finals and the final, like Hyderabad have, yes, you get into an AFC qualifier spot. So whoever wins the I-League this year has a better, outcome at the end. You've got the I-League title, and you've got a direct entry. Yeah, and you're straight in the group stages. So as much as we'll sit here and say, all right, the ATK Mohun Bagan had a decent season, they finished third in the league, right? If, let's say, Mohammedan Sporting win the I-League, which they should do, right? Mohammedan Sporting had a better season than ATK Mohun Bagan. And you can't argue with the fact next season when the AFC Cup starts, Mohammedan Sporting are the top team in Kolkata.
Yeah.
As in, they're playing in the top. They're playing in a higher level of competition. Even though they might be in the I-League, they're playing in AFC Cup. They're in the group stages.
Yeah.
So, bragging rights wise, so that's why for me, top 4 means nothing.
It makes sense when you break it down like this, and I also agree with you in the sense that it doesn't feel absolutely right when you keep saying the top four normal. This thing came out of the English Premier League, right? The top four was the Champions League. It's really got
Champions
nothing
League,
to do with it. Yeah. So it's a playoff, whatever. So the listeners can tell us what they think about that. We'll clip this out. And now Mumbai City FC, we all looked at it and said, good team, probably Champions League is up on the way, so they're probably going to use the time and play well, and all of that just fell off a cliff somehow. Des Buckingham, when I did speak to him for a podcast as well, he seemed like a upgrade from what was the name? I forgot the name of the coach. I'm blanking.
Lobera,
yes, Sergio Lobera. So it seemed like it was a move up, but what went wrong there?
I think I'm not sure if it was on your podcast or some others, because I probably sometimes give different answers on different ones, but I didn't feel you got to make it freshen it up, otherwise people won't listen to it.
Yeah.
But I think I didn't feel that Mumbai would make it this year to the top four. And one of the reasons
I think you did it.
Yeah. And one of the reasons I felt their recruitment wasn't good. And you always say this because look, it's a cliche thing. When you win and you're a champion, you've got to strengthen your team. Just like obviously teams that miss out always strengthen. Teams that get relegated or finish bottom, they always strengthen to avoid that. But if you're a top team, you actually have to strengthen. Now, we did it like at Bengaluru, the year we won the league, the first season, arguably the best player, Johnny Manyongo.
Yeah,
when not upgraded on him.
He was the best player. I will agree with
best player. Yeah.
Goalkeeper
upgraded on him. The second season, you win the Fed Cup, you finish second. You still go and improve in terms of personnel. You go and get different players. Like even in the second season, I think Eugene came in. You changed left backs, so you keep improving. Again, and Josh Walker left, another player came in. So you constantly striker went. You change strikers. So you have to improve even when you're winning. Otherwise, you got a target on your back. Everyone's coming for you next season anyway. Your players can't get complacent. And I think Mumbai missed a huge trick in their recruitment. They thought they were much better than everyone. They let go of, and again, you'd probably say they've lent too much on the previous coach in terms of their recruitment, because nobody in their right mind would think, all right, we've won the league. We're going to be playing in the AFC Champions League. Let's go for Nawaz as our goalkeeper over Amrinder. That's not a logical step. So that's you've weakened if you're building from the back, you're weakened at the back. You've kept Murtada Fall. Murtada Fall got success last season, and Mumbai got success the previous season, because at times when it was tough, Hernan Santana would play alongside him, and they would play with two foreign centre backs. You lost Hernan Santana. You didn't replace with another foreign centre back. You went with the belief that one less foreigner, we don't need backup for Murtada Fall. That I think was a mistake. Having Raul Beke, thinking, will Raul Beke make up for that? He did at times, but he had to play right back as well. So he can't cover two positions. So I don't think in full back position, they were as strong as a lot of the other teams in the league. You wouldn't say their left back is top 10 in the country. So you can't be the top team in the country going to compete in AFC Champions League and not even have probably the top 10 left back in the league or in the country. And similarly, if you count Raul Beke as a centre back, I don't think they have a top 10 right back in the league. So they're weak at the back that way. Going to midfield, Jahu is brilliant. Apuya, great signing. But in a way, losing Rowland Borges due to injury was huge. I think what he provided them last season, he's just a complete player, I think, and key to them. And then no doubt Boumous is going to be a miss. Is Casio a good enough replacement for Boumous? Probably not. And then I think they just didn't strengthen. So along the spine, again, you lose a Bartok Beche. You brought in Katatau. I thought Katatau was decent whenever he came on, he scored, but they let go of him in the middle of the, in January window, and then brought in an ISL reject in Diego Maurizio. He was a guy who scored goals for Odisha, but no other ISL team said, okay, you've scored 12 goals, let's sign him, because his all-round game wasn't good enough. So again, you lost the leadership of Bart, you lost the goals, and you put everything basically on Igor Angulo's shoulders. So with Citigroup's network, with their scouting network, the best they could do was Catatau, Casio, and Diego Maurizio, which for me, Diego Maurizio is a shocking one because in all the Citigroup network, you've gone for a player that was already in the ISL and nobody in the ISL wanted. So either you're trying to say we know better than every other club who's seen and played against him, and we're going to go and sign him. What did he provide? He from 1 goal from a mistake against FC Goa in open play and 2 penalties, I think. So didn't really offer enough.
Hardly played, right? Again,
that's another kind of enigma in terms of previous season at both at ATK Mohun Bagan and Odisha. Didn't sort of light up the league, and I think a lot of teams got their Asian player wrong. And if you look at how little Brad played up until the end of the season, even you got to question why didn't you either replace him or was he the right player in terms of the system you needed? Did you need another centre back rather than another midfielder?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's all the way I saw it, like with my untrained eyes, is that the 2 wing backs were a problem. Initially, they sort of got along with it, and then once they started playing behind them because they was sort of pushed forward, and they never really recovered from that. But I cannot, for the life of me, think that can be the only issue, because obviously these guys are smarter than me. They should see it and try to fix it. But when you put it in the perspective that the quality of the wing backs are not that great, it makes sense that there is probably some mistakes that they cannot fix, especially without a transfer window.
Yeah, and I think you look at their January transfer window. I thought, they made some poor signings. I don't think their January signings made them stronger. In effect, it made them possibly weaker. They just went on a bit of a run and did well. And you can argue if Jahu hadn't got injured in that game against Jamshedpur, would they have had a chance in the remaining games? But they had a plan A at the start of the season, which was you could see typically 65th minute, Angulo would come off, Catatau would come on. Catatau, fortunately for them, first touch scores. Pretty much every time he came on, he scored. And towards the end of the season, you looked at it, 65th minute roughly, Igor Angulo off, and it was Diego Maurizio coming on. So there was a plan A. You never really saw a plan B. You never saw them thinking, right, we're chasing a goal. We need to get 2 goals. Let's play both 2 strikers up there. Or, they did it with Vikram Pratap and Diego. But you never saw a significantly different way of playing. It was always the same. There was a lot of emphasis on build-up, and there was a lot of emphasis on playing good football. But for me, playing good football also means you have to defend. And I don't think defensively they were great. I thought they had a soft underbelly, and that eventually cost you.
I think I'm a little scared for them in the Champions League. Not as confident as I was with Goa, for sure.
I think we were all scared for Goa last year, but Goa surprised us. I don't think we're getting 2 surprises in 2 years.
Absolutely not. So let's veer on to take that, and then directly veer on to FC Goa. You said at the start of the season when we were making predictions that every year you get one spectacularly wrong, and everyone gets one spectacularly wrong. This year that was FC Goa. I really feel for them, because some things are sort of out of their control with the COVID and everything. But even before that, it didn't look like this was a team that had that looked like trying to improve from the year before, because they were on such a high last year, right?
Yeah, I think if you look at from this for 2021, you look at all the way up to probably December, you'd say it's been great 11 months for them. Finished the season well. They made it into the semi-finals with new coach, having lost a lot of their key players, lost on a penalty shootout to Mumbai on that unbeaten run of 15 games. It was terrific. Then they go on and win the Durand Cup. You're thinking this is a sort of model Indian football club. This is how it should be. You're promoting your youngsters coming through, a lot of local talent, retaining foreign players for multiple year contracts. Like, you're confident enough that you'll sign an Ortiz for 2 years, sign players for 2 years, and you accept that you lose 1 or 2, like you did at the previous season with Boumous, but you replaced him. You lose an Angulo, you're going to replace him. But then I think just everything that could go wrong went wrong for them. I mean, you've got off-field problems where their training ground was, taken over by the locals and vandalized, or cricket pitch was put inside it. There's, the coach being poached, internal sort of problems in dressing room issues, Brandon being injured for a long time, and I think you start to see that it started to snowball one after the other, and then the COVID cases hit them, and I think they were everyone was unlucky, but they were the most unlucky and most severely hit by COVID issues. And I think it got to a point where now people are just waiting for the season to end and say, right, put a line through this, let's write this off, and then let's rebuild. Almost like what the previous season you could say BFC did, where they just put a line through it and said, okay, we lost the coach midway through the season. This season's a write-off. Let's just build for next season. And I think if you'd have bet your money, well, obviously we would have lost a lot because we would have all bet that FC Goa would have made it top 4 last year. But if you would have bet again, I'm not going to put a bold bet to say FC Goa will be top 4 next season. But if there's any club that you'd bet on to rebuild and rebuild properly, bounce back and rebuild properly, it would be them. I don't think. I think this is a blip, and they had a blip in the last year of Zico, and they were spectacular for the next couple of years. And I think sometimes you need that in Indian football, where complacency can kick in. You've got too many people who've been there for too long; they've become part of the furniture, right? Whether it's foreign players, whether it's Indian players, and you get that sort of government job mentality. Is like, I can't be sacked, so I just need to show up to work and things will happen. So as much as at the end of the season, some of their players were still saying, oh, we play the best football in the league. That's not enough anymore. Sometimes you need to play the worst football in the league, but get the result and win, get the result or get the clean sheet and just do it ugly. But again, you look at some of the stats, the XG, the number of times they've hit the post. There's so many games they could have won. Just a little bit of fortune. So I think they don't think that's as far off as the league table suggests. So in their case, I'd probably say the league table does lie a little bit. They may be not a top 4 team, but they weren't a bottom 4 team. So
it's tough for them. Like I think, like you said, Ravi the task is set out for him and the others to rebuild the whole team, Akshay and everybody behind him. And we'll see. I think they'll bring youngsters through also. So, and they run on a budget, right? Like that's the best part. That's
the best part. And I think what people forget is, would you rather be 5th or even top 4? Like we were saying about top 4, right? What does top 4 mean? Would you rather say, okay, we made top 4, or we were 5th and missed it by a point and got nothing, or we won the Durand Cup, we got silverware? For me, silverware trumps everything.
Absolutely.
Because say what you want, they played with a lot of youngsters, got a lot of them, because some of those benefits will be reaped a few years down the line. And so for me, I still think their season isn't as bad as people say. They're still a success. They've still got more silverware than ATK Mohun Bagan and spent considerably less. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the 2 things that I wanted to say about this, right? I think we had a conversation, at least I've told you this, that the Durand Cup, it is highly disrespected in some ways. It's 100 and something odd, old tournament. And that's winning that tournament. I think for them, it's massive because they finally managed to get a silverware after missing out, last year, the Shield they won, but still they missed out on the title and stuff like that. So it's good for them that they got the silverware out of the way. And plus, if you look at it from what do you say? That's a team that's always going to develop youngsters, and
absolutely.
And so they are always, you have a Liston may not be the best case, but let's say Ishan Pandita, they got 90 lakhs, whatever for him for 1 year. Didn't really significantly miss him. Yes, he does score a lot of late goals. He continued to score he should be the mascot for injury time because he scores so late in things. Yeah. So they do make a lot of money as well. Boomu, they made money. Even with the coach, they made money. So they are well run.
Absolutely. And I think if they are smart, maybe Nemil, I'm sure a certain southern team would be in for him. And
that's not veiled.
Right. And might throw silly money at him. And if they do, there's no player that's beyond it because they can keep producing. Because look, you can let go of a Pandita because Devendra Murugaonkar came in and did in terms of numbers did better, provided more. So, and there's so many players of that they've got. I mean, we played against their youth team in preseason, and they've got some really good young players over there. And I wouldn't surprise me at all if they win or are one of the top 4 teams in the development league, which starts next month.
So. Yeah, absolutely. So kudos to them. Hopefully they can bounce back. It's always nice to have teams who help youngsters be up there in the top. It's good for Indian football. Now another team in transition, Bengaluru FC. This is my personal view. I like the coach. He's pretty open in what he wants to say, and he gets emotional also, which is good because that shows he cares. I thought they made some step up, but it's still a bit far off for them to get to the top 4.
Yeah, I mean, Marco certainly grew on me. I think really respect and admire him amongst the sort of coaches who didn't finish in the top 4. Definitely massive amount of respect for him, and I think definitely one that should be retained because of, as you said, he's honest. He's got his principles right, and he does the right things. And I'm not just saying that because he listened to some of the suggestions we gave on TV. Like, we just look. He said Ashik's not a left back. Put up the stats to show he's not a left back. He's causing mistakes. Stop playing Ashik at left back. Guess what happens? They start winning games. And then who emerges out of all of that? Roshan, yeah. Emerging player of the season. So, I'm not going to sit here and like pat myself on the back and Eric and me saying, look, we told you so. But
you guys have seen him. This is the funny thing. Eric has played with Roshan. You and I have been there for all the Super Division games. I've seen you in all Super Division games. You sit and watch.
Correct.
Roshan is good. And he's actually not a left back. He's a left-sided player. He can play.
Yeah. And similarly, I've seen Ashik. I had him at Pune. I played him in certain positions, and I know where to get the best out of him. And I worked with him, and I know his strengths and weaknesses. And matter of fact, when he was with us at Pune, he went into the national team. And played as a number 9 in India's probably best victory. in against Thailand. And Eric's played with him as well and trained with him every single day in BFC. So when we're saying it's like, we're not just saying this because we're trying to make a TV moment or trying to just be picking a fault with a coach. Like, guys, we know what we're talking about, and we can back it up with data if you want, which we have in the limited time we have on the air to show you. Look, here's the stats. And then we can show you the clips where, the bad positioning, the own goals, the, struggling to play the ball because he's just not a left back and he doesn't want to play there. If you ask Ashik, he doesn't want to play there.
Of course not.
That's the other one. He doesn't want to play there. He would move to another club, maybe another southern club, if he gets the opportunity to play in an attacking position, because that's what he wants to do.
Yeah.
So credit to Marco, made that change. Sunil needed, for the lack of a better phrase, a kick up the backside. Again, complacency can kick in where you become part of the furniture. I'm not by any means saying he's over and you write him off. He's still got a good couple of years left in him, but you have to learn how to use senior players. You look at history of football across the world. You look at something maybe like a Ryan Giggs at Man United. As he got older, how coaches used him, how Ferguson used him, and you still got a lot out of him. And he played till he was 40. You can still do that with Sunil because he'll keep himself fit. He's super motivated, and he'll always give 100% on the field. But you need to know how to move him in that jigsaw puzzle. And I thought towards the end, Marco started doing that very well. And there's not many coaches who've come to Indian football who would drop Sunil Chhetri.
Yeah, and very ballsy move.
Yeah. And funnily enough, the ones who drop him get success. Like dropped at BFC and then go on to win the league. I know he's only dropped for the first game, but you've got to know that the team is bigger than the individual. And I think when Marco did that, everyone started to respect Marco a lot more, I think, because you're putting your job on the line. You're just saying, I'm going to drop him. What if I don't get the results? And I'm basically shooting myself in the foot, which, many coaches, Constantine's had that conundrum. Steam Matches had that conundrum. And so that's why I got a lot of respect for Marco. And towards the end, he found a system that was ticking the boxes of what BFC's philosophy was. Develop young Indian players that are coming through the club, still keep a winning mentality. And I think where they were probably let down is recruitment. I thought their foreign players were subpar, and that's being, the new ones, I mean, because Clayton Silva was there before. It's probably their best foreigner this season, I think. Yeah. No doubt about that. The two they signed in the back, they looked ropey in the AFC Cup against lesser opposition. And in the end, one of them had to be replaced. And so no surprise. And then you look at what they let go. Would you have been better off with Juanan?
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah.
You bring in an Asian player, Iman Basafa. I can't even pass judgment on him because we hardly saw him play.
Yeah.
And I still don't know what position he plays. I mean, he was a number 10 in terms of jersey number.
I think, he's not?
Exactly. I don't know. We never really saw enough of him. And would you have been better off with Eric Partler, an Asian player that was on your book? So, so you didn't really, and in terms of numbers, you look at who played as their defensive midfielder, the numbers don't match it. I mean, in terms of like goals and assists that Eric would have provided over the years per season, they didn't have that. And I think not just that, leadership. You've got two Brazilian players who don't speak a word of English in Alan Costa and Ramirez. So you lose a lot at the back. You're playing with defenders who don't communicate. So it makes the job of a Roshan or a Sarthak or a Parago, whoever's playing, a lot more difficult. In the midfield, again, it makes Suresh's job a lot more difficult than others. So I thought their foreign recruitment was possibly one of the worst in the league in that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember Suresh telling how much Eric was helping him during the games and stuff. Last year, the season before, when he broke through. So it makes sense that, like you said, and also I thought, like, just touching on this point of dropping Sunil, that, like you said, it's a very, very ballsy call. Not many coaches would have taken that call. Marco had the courage and conviction to do that. So I think there is a slight change in that side of things also with the coaches this year. Maybe I'm over imagining it because you saw Mohammad Nawaz being dropped, who was brought on so much money. Nishu Kumar in the beginning was dropped because Jessel was the captain. So a lot of these coaches are not afraid to bench your main players. Like you said, Valskis, Jamshedpur and Owen Coyle just immediately sort of pushed him aside and said, we'll go somebody else who's not a proven goal scorer like Valskis is, quote unquote is. So is there like a situation coming in where now the coaches are like little more courageous to take these decisions? Probably Marco had the toughest one because of the person that he was making that decision over, because the legend that Sunil is. Is there something?
I think it could be that. I mean, the other thing is, it's interesting that the coaches you mentioned who did all those things, I'll hazard a guess, none of them are on social media. You don't see anything of Marco.
Like, is on social media. I don't know if he
I know.
Anything.
Yeah, but he's not. I mean, what I mean by they're not active on social media like some of the younger coaches. They're not on the fans group like some coaches I know are. Like they're on the fans WhatsApp group. So in a bubble situation where there's no crowd, you're making that decision. If you've got your notifications off on Twitter and Instagram, right? There's nothing. You've made that decision. You're training with your players, and then you're out on the field. You're getting success. You may get, and I don't think they have owners who are necessarily watching and interfering, saying why isn't he playing or why is he not playing. So you're making a decision purely on footballing basis. It's not personal, obviously. Yeah. It's purely on footballing basis. So you're based on saying, hey, listen, I'm at training every single day, and I see these guys at breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day. So I see stuff that nobody else sees. So I'm making my decision based on 100 and 1,000 more facts than the average sort of Twitter supporter. So I don't need to listen to somebody who's not at training, not at breakfast, not at team meetings, doesn't know what's going on inside our environment. So it's a common sense decision for a lot of these coaches. And it may not seem, as I said, letting go of Valskis for Chukwu, for Twitter fans, it might seem crazy because they look at it because some people were criticizing Chukwu at East Bengal without even knowing the facts. You're playing for a poor team with very, very poor coach. And he still was working so hard. So a lot of us who could see that live at the games are thinking, well, this poor Chukwu, I mean, he's played at a decent level. He's not come from Molde in Norway and played at that level so many games if he's a bad player. He's obviously a very good player. He just, poor chap, was struggling over here where, in a horrible environment where the coaches would just downright rude to him. And it goes to an environment where he's happy. And you look at, all it does is just change of environment and look how a player can just transform. And I think the same with Sunil. I mean, Sunil was going through a rut, which all good players will go through at some point in their life, and you go through a slump. And the old cliche, form is temporary, class is permanent. He came back towards the end of the season, is firing in the goals, and so credit to Marco for that, and credit to Sunil as well. I mean, it's not easy. It does, your egos as a top player, it does take a bruising, but you're not bigger than the team, and I think everyone realized that at the end.
Now let's move from transition team to a team that is always in transition, which is sort of a lot of youngsters with Odisha FC. Again, a season. What do you think? Like from last year, is it a better performance? You said you let go of your captain. You sort of. I don't know what to say. Like, it always felt to me that this is a team where youngsters will get a chance and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think they've got that sort of that they've got that reputation almost of the ones that youngsters can get a chance, which is a good thing, because a lot of young footballers now want to join clubs like Odisha, because they said, I'd rather go to Odisha than earn double at ATK Mohun Bagan, because I don't want to just warm the bench and ruin my career like a Sumit Rathi has done, or a Vidyananda, etc. So you're better off going there. Maybe you won't win the silverware. Maybe you won't play in Asia, right, immediately, but it's better for your career development. And I think from a club perspective, look, they finished bottom with 12 points the previous season. They almost doubled it. They got 23. I think they finished 7th in the league from finishing bottom, and 2 wins the previous season to 6 wins. So you've trebled your wins. So you've got to look at that as some form of success. Now, again, everything is measured in top 4. Yes, it's not successful in that respect, but I think you can't expect a team that finished dead last and was so poor last season, and they've been poor for a couple of seasons. It's not as if last season was, a strange, like an FC Goa one where it's like, okay, that was one bad season. No, it's the rot was there for a while. It's not like from Delhi, you had the excuse of we're transitioning from Delhi to Odisha. They didn't make the top 4 then, and they struggled to win many games. The next season, they were slightly better, but again, not great. You would never say they were contenders. And then obviously in the backs, they had possibly the worst season any clubs. But some problems are still there. I mean, you're still defensively weak, still conceding 43 goals in a season, still susceptible from set pieces. So it's a process. I think they need to fix things, but they're moving in the right direction. I mean, you'd be happy that the way they started the season, when they were, at one point they were top of the table, and I think they had 9 points in the first 4 games. And if a couple of ifs, buts, and maybes, and maybe when COVID hit them as well, they were a little bit unlucky, but they could have finished maybe 6th or 5th. And I think if they'd finished 5th or 6th, you'd say that was a very good season for them. Yeah. Again, so that's you have to be pragmatic about certain things.
So step by step, hopefully for them.
Yeah.
And then another team is Chennai, who is a Jekyll and Hyde of ISL, if you ask me, because either they are champions or they are nowhere there. But this season, it felt very strange, because you recruit a coach, and you recruit the player that he wants. Everything is good. It looked like things were going well. You're playing a defensive style of football, probably the toughest team to beat in the first few games in the first part of the league. Then just everything goes down the drain. You sack the coach. It doesn't make any sense when ISL teams sack the coach in the mid-season most of the time, unless there is some problem behind the scenes that most people are not aware of.
Yeah, I think, look, if you've lost the dressing room and you've players are not performing for you, I think it's that there are reasons why it might be worth letting go of the coach. And the other thing is that what surprised me with a lot of these clubs is, again, you look behind the scenes of management. You're going into a season where your key players, your Anirudh Thapa, out of contract on May 2022, Vishal Kate out of contract, Jerry Lal-Ronzola. So all across their line, goalkeeper, defense, midfield, And up front, you've got Changte as well. Changte. So all across all four lines, you've got key personnel, the core Indian players out of contract. So you're going into a season with instability because obviously those players are going to get offers. Obviously, as a club, if you're going to try and retain them, you're trying to break the bank. So you've got players and their agents doing contract negotiations while games are going on. So that's certainly destabilizing players. And you might be, as players, especially when you're in a bubble, you're probably talking like, maybe if you and me were at a club, I'd be asking you, are you staying Sandeep next season? Like, I don't know. Where you thinking of going? Well, I've got an offer from Goa and I've got an offer from ATK Mohun Bagan. Like, yeah, I've got a couple of offers. Well, I'm not sure. If you stay, I'll stay. So there's that. Like, and then you start thinking, well, if this coach stays, would you stay? And you're thinking, not really. So all that's going on. So I think it doesn't help the coach when you've got instability in that respect with the Indian players. It certainly doesn't help when an agent is bringing players and coaches into a club, because I think 5 out of the 6 foreigners and the coach were from the same agency. So it's clear that it's not a management and a footballing decision that's bringing these people in. It's external factors. And that's never a good sign in a football club, because you're just given too much control to the wrong people. And a couple of clubs did that this season, where an external agency or an agency was bringing in the coach and foreign players. And it proved. Chennai was an example. Odisha is an example. It doesn't work. And even to an extent, Bengaluru, right? You look at the players that the coach brought in, right? Because a lot of these coaches are new to Indian football. It's different if Owen Coyle brings in Greg Stewart. He's been here for 2 years. He knows the league. He knows what works here. He knows what doesn't work here. Manolo Marquez knows what works, what players can live in a bubble, what players can understand Indian football, Indian footballers, and not get frustrated by some of the shortcomings. Whereas I think Chennai, when it's going well, like at the start of the season and pre-season when they're tough to beat, yeah, everything looks rosy. But the moment you hit a speed bump, then things went out the window. And I think he had a plan A in pre-season. If your plan A was to play a back three, were the Indian personnel right for him? So that's where, I mean, there's a disconnect between what the coach wants to do and what the management have given him in terms of Indian players. Because the foreign players he brought, now if you're going to play a certain way, a defensive style of football, should you have had someone alongside Damjanovic? Because I thought Damjanovic was brilliant, a very good centre-back. But there was no one else alongside him. You know, you're having to convert Narayan Das for left back into a centre back in a 3. You're having to then go and sign a Sajid Dutt because you weren't comfortable with Salam Ranjan or Deepak Devrani, who's hardly played in the ISL, being a thing. And then by doing so, you've unsettled Jerry, who again, like I said, is in contract talks. So there was too much instability. And it almost begs the question, would you have been better off sticking with Chaba Laszlo from last season, but having more input in terms of the foreign player selection? Because Chaba, for all tactically, got a lot of things right, and players liked him, and he was improving a lot of players. Players would play for him. Like your Rahim Ali would sign an extension probably if Chaba Laszlo was there. Your Tapas would, etc. You just then needed to get the right personnel. Sometimes you can just find them within the league. You don't have to go outside and take a gamble. Because I think the Chennai foreigners were quite good in terms of it. I think
probably one of the better Asians.
Yeah, Musa was one of the better Asians. I thought Koman and the other midfielder were very solid, and Damjanovic was a good player. I just thought Indian players-wise, huge letdown. So whoever's done their Indian player recruitment, the new players coming in, I don't think any of the new Indian players came in, made them any stronger. Matter of fact, possibly you could say made them weaker. So that's what their Indian player recruitment needs a lot of looking into. And again, there seems a disconnect between the Indian player recruitment, coach recruitment, foreign player recruitment. It's almost as if it's 4 different entities doing different things at the club. So
hopefully they can also bounce back. The last 2 are Northeast United and East Bengal. Northeast United from the high of last season has come down. Lots of problems. Like again, in the club, you heard statements and comments and things you hear down the grapevine. And again, I don't understand why they let go of Kasa Kamara also. It just seemed weird. And especially when you see... Sorry?
Yeah, I think for them it was, if he's going for the African Cup of Nations, it was might as well cut your losses in terms of money and try and bring somebody else in at that time, which you can do before the January transfer window. So that's probably the logic behind that, but there were just too many decisions which you can question. I mean, I'll have to go get my charger and recharge my laptop now, because that's how long it'll go on in terms of identifying so many things that they started the season wrong with. And again, it's almost like the success of last season is probably one of the reasons why they had that. So you start thinking everything's perfect. So
at least VP Suhair is one good.
Yeah. Because of the success they had last season, they probably thought, we've ticked a lot of the boxes last year. We don't need to do too much. Where we've got the ingredients for the right thing. I mean, credit to them for retaining Khalid Jamil. I think that was a good one, because otherwise fingers would have been pointed at them. But I think in terms of what they lost, you lost Apoya, you lost Ningto, I think, and you lost maybe some of the Indian players they could have strengthened, because again, they didn't have strength in depth. They had some good young Indian players coming through, but not enough to challenge everyone to keep them on their toes. And I think the foreign players, again, it's tricky. I mean, I thought Hernan was a very, very good signing, but maybe they just needed a few more in terms of that respect. And that's probably where they went wrong in that respect.
Yeah, hopefully this is another team. Hopefully they can sort of continue or try and improve next year. East Bengal, I've really got nothing to say about them, because it just seems like, because when you start your recruitment a month before the league or whatever, once everybody's already done recruiting and things, it's never going to be easy for them. So I had no hopes for them in the beginning, and I was just happy to see Renedy there as a coach for a couple of games. It's good to see him get that run. That's the only thing, really.
Yeah, I think no one had any expectations on them this season. Almost you had less expectation on them this season than last season, because again, they left it till very, very late. And again, it's another one. You look at it's just a common theme now. You can see there's one agent getting all the players in towards the end of the season. So it's almost like, if you want to know what's the recipe for failure, it's there. You're putting all your eggs in one basket, and that's what's going to happen. And it happened exactly to them as we'd expect. But as with anything, there's always bright sparks. But with Northeast, you can look at VP Suhair. A couple of bright sparks were there. Joe Zohair-Liana. There's definitely bright sparks. Similarly with SC East Bengal, you've got, I thought Namte coming through was a bright spark. Hira Mondal was a bright spark. And obviously, I think Renedy, because he steadied the ship. I mean, from what I've heard from people behind the scenes, how bad the coaches were before, in terms of players getting up at 5 a.m. and doing their COVID test and then going and training at 6 because it was cooler. It's almost like an academy atmosphere, because you've got a guy who's never really coached the first team and is more of an academy coach, not letting players listen to music while they're eating, and the accommodation situation. It was just everything that could go wrong did go wrong for them at the start of the season. So you can't blame the players. I mean, they try and give everything, and you could see that the moment Renedy came in, all of a sudden the players were now playing for one another, playing for the coach. And a lot of games he played without foreign players. So and he still got respectable 0-0s. Last minute he lost against Jamshedpur. So you could show that players were playing for him. Players will play for Indian coaches. You saw that, I think, even with Anshul at Odisha, the 2 games that he was in charge, didn't lose either of those 2 games. So whilst people might look at what happened with Khalid and say, oh, this is why Indian players can't do it. Sorry, Indian coaches. I thought some of the 2 young Indian coaches who got their opportunities showed that, it isn't all doom and gloom for Indian coaches. They can get players to respond to them. They can get foreign players playing for them as well. And that's probably one of the bright sparks. And I hope, and I think even bigger respect for Renedy now, because he refused to stay when they brought in the new coach, who again, it was a former video analyst. And you try and promote, a random video analyst who's got no coaching experience in India, no coaching experience anywhere in the world. for that matter, with the first team, and you make him the head coach. And Renedy just said, all right, I'm not, that's the direction the club wants to go, albeit then, and then he stepped aside, and he was not just going to stay there as the token assistant. So even more respect for that, for, you know, having stood his ground. And I think in the end, you look at the way the team played, I think they definitely played better under Renedy. And if he had availability of all foreign players and was allowed in the January window to possibly go and sign 2 or 3 foreign players that he would have wanted to, then I'm sure they would have had a stronger finish to the end of the season. So hopefully they sort out all that with the investors, because look, next year we're going to be home and away, not in a bubble. You want to be going to games at Salt Lake with an intimidating East Bengal team like it always used to be. So even if you're one of the opposition coaches, you're a coach at an FC Goa or something, and you know one of the teams that you're in a title run in with has to away game, or, you know, has to go and play an away game at SC East Bengal, you know that irrespective of the relative strength over the last couple of years of the team, that's going to be a tough fixture because of the crowd, and because hopefully they'll build a stronger team. So all those rumors of new investors and everything, let's hope it comes to fruition and they can put out a strong team.
Absolutely. Now just some tidbits here and there. Now you said going back to home and away, how much did you guys miss the fans? I mean, I'm asking you because you were at the games. Most of us were not.
It's weird. I mean, like, you go there and you know, you're adjusting your volume levels as a commentator sometimes, and you're trying to like turn the crowd noise down because it's piped in noise, and you know, you want to be able to listen to, like at certain stadiums like Bambalim, we're right behind the benches. You want to hear the benches because you actually get a little bit of info. At Fatora, we're so far away. Fortunately, we just got a lot of goals at Fatora, but you've gone from being somebody who's trying to comment and provide your expert analysis of what's going on at the ground to becoming an actor, because you've suddenly got to create an atmosphere that a goal has been scored, like Liston's goal. Yeah, wonderful goal, got us off our seats, but can you imagine what that would have been like if there were fans?
Yeah.
And, you know, when the replay gets shown on a big screen. So those are the factors. And similarly, when there's play acting going on, which is one of my pet peeves, when people are like diving, or the whole holding your hamstring to try and kill time, you know, that's what you want. You want fans in the stadium booing at someone to stop that happening, and all that kind of stuff. And I think it definitely looking forward to that, because I think it's been 2 years. It's been too long. I think other countries got back to it a lot quicker. Other sports in this country have gone back to it a lot quicker. And even some of the local leagues here have had fans. So I think it would be good to see it next year. And not just from the fans as well. I think even from football point of view, to be playing and having that home advantage, even if it's not necessarily sell out stadiums, but just the travel, going there, training, dealing with how we're going to play. Maybe we play more defensively away. We try and win our home games or whatever. Seeing that tactical changes from coaches at home and away. Climatic conditions play a different, you know how it is in India. Playing certain times of the year in certain parts of the country is completely different. You know, so all those aspects. And yeah, I think there's a certain charm of being in Kochi, getting to that stadium when the fans are there before, because they travel from so far across the state that they're there before kickoff. Whereas Chennai, the first half empty stadium, second half much more crowded, right? You get different things at different stadiums. You know, BFC, I can actually hear the crowd from my house when a goal scores, and so if I'm not the rare occasions when I'm not at a game, I can actually hear it. So there's all different things, and even Jamshedpur, they've always packed their stadium, and I think it'll be tremendous next year now that they're defending champions, that the atmosphere they'll create. And curious to see how Hyderabad reacts now that they've got because they always say, right, if you win and you're successful, that'll help bring the crowds in. So curious to see whether that, you know, theory holds. So
yeah. And what was it like with the COVID breaks and all for you? I mean, obviously not so bad for you, but just the clubs, and I just sort of just at that point, to be completely honest.
I was very, very fortunate that I took a break at the time just before the cases started. So I didn't actually had to go through all the quarantine and stuff, but I heard from teams it was terrible, because they were going by let's take the safest option, which is put everybody in. If you're a close contact, you are to be put in quarantine. There was obviously, if it's a physios had close contact with everyone. So Both physios are out, doctors out. So you had some teams where the medical team personnel weren't available for matches. So there's a lot of things which you couldn't plan for. There's whatever planning you have, and best planning gets thrown out the window. And towards the end, you just had to just accept that it is what it is. You have to live with it and play to a certain extent with the players that you have available. So I think credit to all the coaches and everyone who's with clubs, because first year everyone went through it because you felt like the game must go on. These are the sacrifices we have to make. And the second year was especially tough on people who'd done it already for one season. Tougher for, I think, the likes of Bengaluru FC, FC Goa, because they'd done it last season, done it for the AFC competitions, then had to go back and do it again this year. So there is a certain amount of mental fatigue that kicked in with a lot of those staff as well as players. And it's not easy. It's not easy being cooped up in your room away from your families and all that, especially when you're hearing outside maybe things are happening, positive or negative, with your families away from home. So I think that was very tough. And I think most players, especially the foreign players, wouldn't come back next year if it was a bubble environment. So I'm glad. Hopefully no more bubbles, and we get back to just home and away.
So. Yeah, it was. I spoke to someone who was in a bubble for a long time, and when they came out to a different world, right? Where everything is open, people are just walking around, and they're having this little bit of pangs of anxiety that this is the most amount of people they've seen. A lot of them are not wearing masks, or they're all standing too close to each other. There's no protocols per se, so they're having some time to adjust as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, the cliche thing. I mean, you like in the movie Shawshank Redemption, he says when you come out of prison, it's almost like you don't know how to live in the outside world. Being in a bio bubble with football teams and the environment, it's like being in a very posh prison for 5 months. So,
so in terms of stories that you saw this year, like about players or teams, story arcs, narratives, is there anything that stands out for you that is your favorite?
I thought, the way, you're not privy to obviously every single thing that happened, but there was like, you catch bits on social media here and there. There was one, the stuff that stands out, the way the team built, the team bonding was with teams like Kerala Blast as well. I think Ivan said it to someone. He goes, I'm focusing maybe 30% on technical work. The other side is more on the social psychological side of it. You see Hyderabad FC where they're having a barbecue, and you've got, like, obviously any barbecue, your Brazilian players and your South American players are going to be at the front of it. You've got Zhao grilling some meat and players around that. And Jamshedpur, the way Owen Coyle is, he's joining in with training and having a laugh. They've got their pet dogs at the training ground who would become part of their club family. All those little things, I think the teams who did that and understood the human side of it, which again connects back to what we were saying about being in a bio bubble, were successful this season. And I hope that continues next year. Just because you're not in a bubble, it doesn't mean that side of it isn't important. It's still, coaches who are coming into this country need to understand the culture of whichever part of the city you're in, understand the culture of where your players are coming from, because not all your players are from that particular city or region that you're from. And the more they can, I could say, absorb that culture and take it in and integrate themselves, like the foreign players who do that, integrate themselves with the Indian players, I think that's going to bode well in the long run for both Indian players, Indian football and stuff. And it's good to see. I mean, I spoke to one of the players recently, and I said, "What are you doing? You're heading back home?" So, and he goes, "No, my family's coming over to India. We're going to have a little holiday over here, go around, see some bits." And it's no surprise that he's one of the most successful players who's ever played over here. So I think that it's great to see those kind of stories. And it shouldn't be just for social media. It should be just for overall development of the game and the clubs and the culture. Because I think now that you have access to the fans next season, doing all those kind of things will help grow the sport in the country. Because if you start doing, we did it at Bengaluru FC, whether it was going bowling, paintballing, etc. We did stuff with the fans at Arbor, at the bar. And you look at it, that's a bond that you create with fans that stays with you for a long time. And what Kerala have done with their fan culture, even if it's a tenth of that can be recreated by the other 10 clubs, that's great for Indian football. So I think that would be what you'd want as your sort of wish list for next season and beyond.
For me, like on a personal level, I thought the redemption of Kattimani was a fantastic story arc. Just to see that guy, I'd written an article about goalkeepers because they were getting a lot of flags. At that time, I'd spoken to him, and it really affected him what happened in 2015 with Goa, and it took him so long to rebuild. And I think he was the best goalkeeper this year. And he's never going to get a national team call-up. I think his age is at that level where that's not going to happen. And he made a mistake here in the final again, and people were on social media saying, "Oh, he's done it again." For him to save 4 penalties, I don't think that the penalty had to be retaken. Also, it was very close. But whatever.
I agree with you. I don't think that penalty needed to be retaken, and for me, I don't think national team call-up is the right thing for him either. I mean, I wouldn't criticize too much for not picking him, because you've got to start thinking, I've got I've got a good number 1 and a number 2. He's probably not gonna get better than them, and I've got 2 youngsters, so why hamper their progress? I think guys like Gill probably need that opportunity. And the only thing, I mean, you could make it like a token gesture, saying call him into the camp as one of the 4, and then when you make your final 3, let him go and say thanks, but I've got to look for the future, blah blah blah, and just give him that reward and recognition for it. But I think it's a great story just to show that amongst all the sort of Hyderabad young players developing, Manolo's developed young players, he's not just done that, he's resurrected someone's career as well. And again, it goes back to what I said about simplifying the game. Katti got criticized a lot at FC Goa because he was put into a situation where you're trying to get him to play out from the back, and then when he makes some missed passes, people criticize. That's not his forte, playing out from the back. His forte is a shot stopper. And, his old days of being a volleyball player and playing in those, Goa penalty shootouts, you could see all those skill sets come to the fore. I mean, that save in the semi-final with one hand, just tipping it over, was, world class. And the reactions and the strong arm and everything, and then the penalty and the thing. So it's great that you end with those images rather than it would be gutting to sort of say, that Rahul KP winner with a goalkeeping error and that's how the season ended. It would have been, in a way, it would have been a fitting because it's been a season of goalkeeping errors. But but it's nice to end it on a high with the goalkeeping positives in a way. So.
Absolutely. So that would be my one. Maybe Khabra also to an extent, because I think he has sort of resurrect for a long time in BFC. I thought he was not the Khabra of old, like that Khabra who used to get the fouls and things, but that part was there. But he was not that vocal, shouting, strong guy. He may have been, but it didn't come across like that. So when we went to Kerala, we knew that he was the guy.
Yes, I think sometimes some players have to get out of the shadow of certain other bigger personalities of the club, and you're never going to be the biggest personality at BFC. There's always going to be more attention on certain foreigners and certain Indian players, and certain players who've been there for many years. So it's great for him to go to a club and be the sort of, the alpha personality there. And I think everyone rallied around him. And I think if you look at the successful clubs this season, they all had that kind of one personality, whether it's Peter Hartley at Jamshedpur. You look and you think leader, you think Peter Hartley immediately. And when the games are tough, the guy's playing with injections and through pain to make sure they went on that unbeaten run and got the title. You look at like Cabra over there, the influence when he came back after missing a couple of games. You look at, the successful teams, they had that personality, that main guy, whether it's Zhao, Bhat, at Hyderabad. And maybe was that something that was missing at ATK Mohun Bagan? You didn't have that one person that everyone rallies around, that one leader. Maybe you have too many leaders there. And I think that's it's a good sort of little learning tool for other clubs to look to rebuild on next season as well.
Absolutely. Personality is very, very important.
Yeah. Don't just look at the numbers when you're recruiting, look at the personality.
So. Yeah, absolutely. So this is, we generally go by team of the season, but this time I thought, let's do a 5-a-side.
Okay.
Who would your five-a-side be?
All right.
You can go with
Obviously,
5 strikers also, right? It's fine. It's a
okay. No. I'll balance it out. I'll pick a goalkeeper. I'll pick Katimani because you know, five-a-side, you face so many shots. You don't really need to play out the back. You need shot stoppers. So I'll go with Kati in goal. I'll go with you got to go with the defender. I think defensively, I thought I've got tough choice between obviously Leskovic, Damjanovic, and Hartley. But for me, he's in my team of the season for 11-a-side. So I'll pick him again for 5-a-side, Damjanovic, because I thought 1v1 defending, probably the best defender in the league, 1 versus 1. Midfield, I'll let me go. So 5, I'll go 2 and 2, 2 and 1 then.
You want to make it 7-a-side?
No, it's okay. I think Greg Stewart's got to be in there. Just brilliance from him in that respect. And obviously I've picked 2 foreigners, 1 Indian. I'll go with another Indian. I think Liston's got to be in there. Coming in from one side, if you got Stewart from one side, Liston from the other, I thought he's one of the players that I would pay to watch. He's exciting to watch. I think his career development.
Right? Like for a young man to take those shots.
Take free kicks. He steps up amongst that team with all those personalities. Like, no, I'm taking the free kicks, and he delivers. And you know, I think I've left out Hartley and gone with this. So I need a captain. I need a leader. So I'm going to go with Bartok Becci up front because I think if I've got him in the side, I'm winning silverware. So that's my 5-a-side team.
That's a pretty strong team right there. So I think that's about all that we have here. Hopefully next year, we'll see how the things go next year. Maybe start a little earlier with the cup competitions and stuff, and then get on to the league. And I don't know. It's too early for me to say anything, I guess.
No, I'm hopeful that there'll be something in September, some kind of a tournament. More teams will probably take part in Durand if they have it. Let's just fingers crossed, no more 4th wave or no more disruptions to any of the football, and we get back to, you know, everything. Local leagues being back on, I-League being home and away, 2nd division being home and away, and not just these mini tournament formats. Because look, that, as I said, that's what we miss, being able to go down to the stadium and just watch live football. And that's the best part about it. So
I snuck in one time. I met you.
Yes. That was good. I mean, I loved it. I watched. I think was there almost every single 2nd division game this season. Been following the I-League now on Facebook Live. There's been some good matches, and actually, that's what I'm glad about. Is ISL's finished now. There's the I-League. That break actually has helped in a way, because now we've got football for the next month and a half, and then when that finishes, we've got AFC Cup, and then when AFC Cup finishes, we've got the national team games in June. So we've got football until July. So pretty happy with that.
Yeah, me too. Because otherwise we'll have no content. Like this year, we had a tough time to sort of balance it, because last year was easier because all of us were working from home. This year we're back to work, so to find the time to do these things, and you have only one day off, so all your things that you had to do for the week you have to do on that one day. So it was a little difficult. I did a podcast with Deshaun Brown, which I don't know if I can put out because it's got such terrible connectivity issues. Like you don't hear half of the things that he's saying. It's really unfortunate. I think it was a good show as far as I can.
I'm sure it was. I'd love to listen to that, or maybe off air. Definitely.
So, that's it. I think that's all, Brad. Thanks a lot for your time. You freely give it all the time as well. And we'll take it. So
pleasure. All right.
Thanks. Hopefully I get to see you soon, one of these days.
Yeah, definitely. We'll catch up in a week's time in Bangalore, and then maybe we'll have a little offline chat about the I-League and all the drama there.
Yeah. We'll do that, right?
Yes.
Cool.
Cool. All right, mate. See you later.